The morning the girl came back, no one in Hinsdale knew how to react, because for 14 years the town had learned how to live without answers. Hinsdale was the kind of place where people waved at each other, even if they didn't like one another, where the same names appeared on mailboxes for generations, and where nothing truly disappeared without leaving a trace in memory. Yet on a cold October morning, when the mist still clung to the Connecticut River and the leaves on Main Street were already turning brown, a young woman stood at the edge of town and forced everyone to confront a story they had buried deep. 14 years earlier, she had vanished. Back then, she was 7 years old, small for her age, with light brown hair that her mother always tied too tight, and a habit of humming when she was nervous. Her name was Lily Harper, and on the day she disappeared, Hinsdale believed it was just another ordinary afternoon. School had ended early because of a power outage, parents were still at work, and children were scattered across backyards and sidewalks. Lily had been walking home from her friend's house, a route she had taken dozens of times before. It was less than 10 minutes. She never made it. At first, no one panicked. Children were late sometimes. They stopped to watch the river, chased frogs, talked too long. But when the sun began to dip behind the trees and Lily still hadn't come home, her mother felt something tighten in her chest, a feeling she couldn't explain. By nightfall, the police were involved. By midnight, volunteers were knocking on doors. By dawn, Hinsdale had become a town holding its breath. Search dogs followed Lily's scent to the edge of a dirt road near the woods and then lost it completely. No footprints, no torn clothing. No witnesses who could say they had seen anything more than a blur, a child-shaped memory that might not have been real. The river was searched. The forest was searched. Old barns, abandoned houses, wells that hadn't been opened in decades. Days passed, then weeks. Hope thinned but did not disappear. Posters went up. Candles were lit. People whispered theories in grocery store aisles and stopped when someone else walked by. Eventually, the search ended. Officially, it ended. Unofficially, it never did. Lily Harper became a ghost in Hinsdale long before anyone declared her dead. Her parents moved away 2 years later. Some said they couldn't stand the silence of the house. Others said they couldn't stand the looks from neighbors who wondered, quietly, if something inside that home had gone wrong. The town tried to move on, but it carried the story like a scar. Children grew up hearing warnings that began with her name. Don't stay out too late. Don't walk alone. Remember what happened to Lily. 14 years is a long time. Long enough for faces to change and memories to soften, but not long enough for guilt to fade. By the time the young woman appeared at the edge of town, most people had convinced themselves that Lily Harper was gone forever, her fate sealed somewhere beyond understanding. That belief shattered the moment she spoke her name. She was found near the old gas station that hadn't been used in years, standing barefoot on the gravel, wearing clothes that didn't belong to any era the town could recognize. A truck driver noticed her first, slowing down because something about her posture felt wrong, as if she were bracing herself against an invisible wind. When he asked if she was okay, she looked at him with wide, frightened eyes and said a single sentence that would echo through Hinsdale for years to come. "My name is Lily Harper. I think I'm supposed to be here." The police were called immediately. At first, they assumed she was confused, maybe suffering from a mental break. She looked to be in her early 20s, malnourished, exhausted, with small scars on her arms and a faint mark around her wrist that looked like an old restraint. But when they asked her questions, she answered with details no stranger should have known. The name of her elementary school teacher, the crack in the sidewalk outside her old house, the song her mother used to sing when she couldn't sleep. By the time word spread, people were standing in the street, watching police cars and whispering to one another, feeling the same fear they had felt 14 years ago return like a sudden illness. Some cried. Some refused to believe it. Others felt something colder settle in their stomachs, because if Lily Harper had come back, then the story they thought they understood was about to change. The official confirmation came later that night. Dental records matched. A childhood fracture in her left arm, documented in hospital files, lined up perfectly. There was no question. The girl who vanished at 7 had returned at 21. What no one was prepared for was how little she remembered, and how much she refused to explain. Lily spoke in fragments, as if her memories were broken pieces she could only pick up one at a time. She remembered the walk home. She remembered the sound of leaves under her shoes. She remembered turning around because she thought someone had called her name. After that, everything became blurred. Rooms without windows, voices she couldn't place, long stretches of time that felt like they didn't exist at all. When people asked where she had been, she shook her head and said the same thing every time. "Not far," she whispered. "I was never far." That answer terrified people more than any detailed story could have. Hinsdale was small. If she had been nearby all those years, then someone had known. Someone had seen her. Someone had stayed silent. As Lily was taken to the hospital for evaluation, old suspicions resurfaced. People began to look at each other differently. Neighbors who had lived side by side for decades suddenly remembered strange noises, odd behavior, a man who kept to himself, a woman who never let anyone into her house. The past was being rewritten in real time. Every memory now filtered through the possibility that the truth had been hiding in plain sight. Doctors tried to assess Lily's mental state, but she was calm in a way that unsettled them. Trauma victims were supposed to be frantic, emotional, unstable. Lily was quiet, observant, her eyes constantly moving as if she were mapping the room. When asked if she felt safe, she hesitated before answering, then said she wasn't sure she knew what safety meant anymore. What no one was prepared for was how little she remembered and how much she refused to explain. Lily spoke in fragments, as if her memories were broken pieces she could only pick up one at a time. She remembered the walk home. She remembered the sound of leaves under her shoes. She remembered turning around because she thought someone had called her name. After that, everything became blurred. Rooms without windows. Voices she couldn't place. Long stretches of time that felt like they didn't exist at all. When people asked where she had been, she shook her head and said the same thing every time. "Not far," she whispered. "I was never far." That answer terrified people more than any detailed story could have. Hinsdale was small. If she had been nearby all those years, then someone had known. Someone had seen her. Someone had stayed silent. As Lily was taken to the hospital for evaluation, old suspicions resurfaced. People began to look at each other differently. Neighbors who had lived side by side for decades suddenly remembered strange noises, odd behavior, a man who kept to himself, a woman who never let anyone into her house. The past was being rewritten in real time. Every memory now filtered through the possibility that the truth had been hiding in plain sight. Doctors tried to assess Lily's mental state, but she was calm in a way that unsettled them. Trauma victims were supposed to be frantic, emotional, unstable. Lily was quiet, observant, her eyes constantly moving as if she were mapping the room. When asked if she felt safe, she hesitated before answering, then said she wasn't sure she knew what safety meant anymore. The most disturbing moment came when a social worker gently asked her if she recognized anyone in the room. Lily scanned the faces, paused, and then looked away. Her hands trembled slightly. "He's not here," she said softly. "He wouldn't come." No one knew who she meant. News spread beyond Hinsdale within hours. Reporters arrived, cameras pointing at every corner of the town, turning private pain into public spectacle. Online forums exploded with theories. Some called it a miracle, others called it a hoax. A few insisted on darker explanations, suggesting that the girl who returned was not the same one who disappeared. Lily herself seemed unaware of the storm she had caused. When asked what made her come back now, after 14 years, she stared at the wall for a long time before answering. "He let me go," she said. That sentence changed everything. Police reopened the case immediately, but they faced a problem they hadn't expected. Lily could not, or would not, describe who he was. She didn't give a name. She didn't describe a face. She only said that he had always been there, watching, waiting, and that something had changed. "He got old," she said once, almost thoughtfully, "or tired, or scared. I'm not sure which. As days passed, strange inconsistencies began to emerge. Lily knew things she shouldn't have known. Details about the town that had changed while she was gone. She recognized new buildings. She commented on renovations that had happened years after her disappearance. When someone pointed this out, she looked genuinely confused. I saw them, she insisted. I just couldn't come out. The implication was unbearable. If Lily had been somewhere within sight of the town, then her captivity was not a distant horror, but an intimate one, woven into the daily lives of the people who had searched for her. At night, older residents lay awake replaying the past. They remembered doors they hadn't knocked on, sounds they had ignored, a sense of unease they had dismissed because acknowledging it would have meant admitting that evil could exist right next door. Lily was allowed limited contact with the outside world as doctors debated her condition. Her parents were notified, and their reaction was cautious, almost fearful. They agreed to come, but they asked questions that unsettled the authorities. Was she really Lily? Was she safe? Was it over? The town watched as the Harper family name returned to the news, reopening wounds that had never fully healed. People who had been children when Lily vanished were now adults, with families of their own, and they realized with a shock that they were older now than the people who had searched for her back then. Time had moved forward without her, leaving a gap that could never be filled. And yet, Lily had returned. What no one knew, not yet, was that her return was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far worse. Because Lily hadn't escaped. She had been released. And whoever had kept her hidden for 14 years was still somewhere in Hinsdale, watching the town react, knowing that the silence was finally breaking. And yet, Lily had returned. What no one knew, not yet, was that her return was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far worse. Because Lily hadn't escaped. She had been released. And whoever had kept her hidden for 14 years was still somewhere in Hinsdale, watching the town react, knowing that the silence was finally breaking. She was moved out of the hospital after 12 days, not because the doctors believed she was healed, but because they understood she would never feel safe there. Lily reacted badly to locked doors and windowless rooms. She slept sitting upright, her back against the wall, eyes half open, as if her body had learned that lying down was a luxury that could be taken away. When they transferred her to a small temporary housing unit on the edge of town, guarded discreetly by local police, Hinsdale began to feel like it was holding a fragile object it didn't know how to touch. People drove past the house slowly. Some left flowers near the fence. Others avoided the area entirely, afraid that seeing her would make the story too real. Lily noticed everything. She noticed the way engines idled longer than necessary, the way curtains twitched, the way voices dropped when she walked by. She did not wave. She did not smile. She watched. The first official interview after her release lasted nearly 4 hours. Detectives tried a different approach, abandoning direct questions in favor of gentle conversation. They talked about school, about weather, about music. Lily responded politely, but her answers often drifted into strange territory, memories that didn't quite fit. She described days that had no beginning or end. She spoke of clocks without numbers and light that never fully turned off. She talked about learning to be quiet, not because she was told to, but because silence kept things calm. When pressed, she stopped talking altogether, her gaze fixing on a point just beyond the interviewer's shoulder. At one moment, when a detective asked her to describe the place she had lived, Lily leaned forward and lowered her voice. "It wasn't a basement," she said. "People always think it was underground. It wasn't." That single statement derailed weeks of assumptions. If Lily hadn't been held below ground, then she had been somewhere ordinary, somewhere that blended in, somewhere people passed every day without noticing. The police began re-examining old tips, thousands of them, most long dismissed. A neighbor who heard crying but assumed it was a radio. A delivery driver who thought he saw a child through a window but never reported it because it felt ridiculous. A letter sent anonymously 5 years after Lily vanished, claiming she was alive and close, which investigators had written off as a cruel prank. Now, nothing felt dismissible anymore. Lily's parents arrived quietly, avoiding cameras. When they saw her for the first time in 14 years, the reunion was not what people expected. There was no dramatic embrace, no collapse into tears. Lily stood still while her mother approached, her body tense, as if bracing for impact. When her mother touched her face, Lily flinched before forcing herself not to pull away. "I know," Lily whispered. "I remember you." Her father asked questions no one else dared to ask. He wanted to know how she had survived, what she ate, whether she was alone. Lily answered carefully, choosing her words with unnatural precision. "I was taught," she said. "That's how." That word unsettled everyone in the room. Taught implied intention, structure, a system. Over the following weeks, Lily's presence began to change Hinsdale in subtle but irreversible ways. People revisited old grudges, old suspicions. A retired school janitor was questioned because someone remembered he had taken an unusual interest in Lily years ago. A man who lived near the woods moved away suddenly without explanation, triggering rumors that spread faster than facts. Lily watched it all unfold with a detachment that felt wrong. She didn't ask for justice. She didn't ask for answers. When asked what she wanted now, she said she wanted to walk. So they let her. Escorted at first, then gradually with less supervision, Lily walked through Hinsdale like someone studying a map only she could see. She paused in front of houses she had never lived in. She stood near the river for long stretches of time, listening. Once, she stopped outside a modest home on the north side of town and went completely still. Her escort asked if she was okay. Lily nodded, but she didn't move. "He changed the door," she said eventually. The house belonged to an elderly man named Arthur Bell, a quiet resident who had lived there for over 30 years. He had no criminal record, no children, no obvious connection to the Harper family. When police questioned him, he seemed confused but cooperative, insisting he had never seen Lily before in his life. Yet Lily reacted violently when she learned his name. Her heart rate spiked. Her hands shook uncontrollably. She locked herself in the bathroom and refused to come out for hours. "That's not him," she said later. But he knew, end quote. End quote. The idea that someone could know and do nothing cut deeper than the idea of a single captor. It suggested a shared silence, an unspoken agreement to look away. As media attention intensified, so did online speculation. Some people accused Lily of fabricating parts of her story. Others accused the town itself, framing Hinsdale as a place that had failed a child and then welcomed her back only to dissect her pain. Lily was advised not to read comments, not to watch coverage. She ignored the advice. "They're closer than they think," she said one evening, staring at a muted television screen. The turning point came when Lily agreed to guide investigators, not to a location, but through a memory. She asked them to sit quietly and not interrupt. She closed her eyes and described what she felt rather than what she saw. The temperature of the air, the sound of footsteps above her, the smell of old wood mixed with something metallic. She described a routine so strict it felt ritualistic. Wake when the light changes, eat when the sound comes, sleep when the door locks. Then she said something that froze the room. "There were others," she whispered. "Not like me. Before me." The implication was horrifying. If Lily was not the first, then her survival was an anomaly. And if there had been others, then there were graves no one had found. Police asked how she knew this. Lily swallowed hard. "They didn't leave," she said. And he told me why. When pressed about who he was, Lily's control finally cracked. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice remained steady. "He wanted to be remembered," she said. "He didn't want to disappear." That motive baffled investigators. Most criminals wanted secrecy, anonymity. Lily's captor, whoever he was, wanted permanence. As the investigation deepened, Lily's behavior became more erratic. She began waking in the middle of the night, convinced someone was standing outside. She insisted on checking locks herself. She corrected people when they used words incorrectly, especially words related to time. Time isn't what you think it is, she said once casually. It's just repetition. Her parents struggled to reconnect with her. They felt like guests in her presence, unsure which version of their daughter stood before them. Lily was physically an adult, but emotionally she existed somewhere between vigilance and detachment, a state shaped by years of control. One evening, her mother asked the question she had been avoiding. "Why now?" she asked. "Why did he let you go now?" End quote. Lily looked at her for a long time, her expression unreadable. "Because people were starting to notice," she said. "And because he couldn't do it anymore." "Do what?" her mother asked. "Keep us quiet." That night, Lily left the house without telling anyone. She was found hours later standing near an abandoned property on the outskirts of town, a place that had been searched during the original investigation but dismissed as irrelevant. She stood at the edge of the lot, trembling, her eyes fixed on the structure. "He's gone," she said when police arrived. But he was here. Inside the building, investigators found signs of recent activity layered over decades of decay. New locks on old doors, scratches on walls that looked deliberate, a narrow room hidden behind shelving, its dimensions eerily consistent with Lily's fragmented descriptions. They did not find a body. They did not find a name. What they found instead was evidence that someone had lived a double life in Hinsdale for years, blending so perfectly into the background that no one had thought to look twice. As word of the discovery spread, fear returned to the town with renewed intensity. If Lily's captor was gone, where had he gone? And if he was dead, who had helped him hide for so long? Lily was quiet after that night. She spoke less. She watched more. When asked if she felt relieved, she shook her head. "This part is worse," she said. "Now everyone has to remember." And as Hinsdale began to unravel its past, it became clear that Lily's return had not solved a mystery. It had exposed one. By the time the investigation reached its third month, Hinsdale no longer felt like a town. It felt like a stage after the curtain had fallen, with everyone still standing in place, unsure whether the performance was over or just beginning. The discovery of the hidden room had erased any remaining comfort people clung to. It was proof that Lily's story was not metaphorical, not exaggerated, not distorted by trauma. Someone had built a space meant to disappear, and they had done it patiently, deliberately, inside a place everyone believed they understood. Lily was taken back into protective housing, this time under tighter supervision, but the precautions seemed almost symbolic. Whatever danger had existed before had already done its damage. The fear now was not of an active threat, but of knowledge, of what might surface if the wrong memory was triggered or the wrong question asked. Detectives began reconstructing the town's history with obsessive precision. They mapped property transfers, renovations, unexplained permits, even power outages stretching back decades. Patterns emerged that no one wanted to see. Certain homes had been sold and resold quietly, often below market value, often without public listings. Certain names appeared repeatedly as witnesses, volunteers, helpers, people who were always nearby, but never central. Lily watched this process unfold with an expression that never quite changed. She seemed unsurprised by the direction the investigation was taking, as if she had already traveled this path internally and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. When asked whether she recognized any of the names being discussed, she rarely answered directly. Instead, she asked questions of her own. How long had they lived here? Who their friends were? Whether they were remembered fondly or not at all. "He cared about being remembered correctly," she said once, quietly. "Not loved, just remembered." That distinction haunted the investigators. It suggested a man driven not by desire or rage alone, but by a fear of erasure, a terror of becoming insignificant. Someone who believed that if he could shape another life completely, then his own would matter. As pressure mounted, cracks began to appear in the town's collective composure. Long-standing friendships fractured, old alliances dissolved. People began volunteering information they had previously dismissed, each confession layered with guilt. A woman admitted she had heard a child crying years ago and told herself it was the television. A man recalled seeing a girl who looked like Lily through a cracked doorway once, frozen in place by the thought that reporting it would make him responsible if he was wrong. No one admitted to helping directly. They didn't have to. Their silence had done enough. Lily was asked if she felt angry. The question seemed to confuse her. "Anger wastes energy," she said. He didn't allow it. That statement revealed more than any detailed account could have. It implied discipline enforced over years, emotional regulation imposed from the outside until it became internal. Lily had not simply survived captivity. She had been conditioned by it. The psychological evaluations became more intense. Specialists from outside the state were brought in, experts in long-term confinement and coercive control. They asked Lily to draw, to write, to narrate. She complied selectively. Her drawings were sparse, architectural rather than emotional. Lines, corners, measurements, no faces, no names. One specialist asked her if she ever thought about escaping before she was released. Lily looked at him carefully. "Escape wasn't the goal," she said. "Staying unnoticed was." That answer reframed everything. Lily had learned that survival depended not on resistance, but on invisibility. She had adapted so completely that escape itself felt dangerous, disruptive. Meanwhile, the manhunt quietly expanded beyond Hinsdale. Financial records revealed accounts that had been closed shortly before Lily's return. Assets liquidated, personal items sold or discarded. Someone had prepared for an ending. Whether that ending was death or disappearance remained unclear. Then came the call that shifted the investigation irreversibly. A woman from a neighboring town contacted the police after seeing Lily on the news. She claimed she had known a man who spoke often about a girl who listened, a man who had died alone in a rented property less than 6 months earlier. At the time of his death, no one had questioned the oddities of his home. The landlord had cleaned it out quickly. The property had already been reassigned. Police moved fast. They tracked the address, gained access, and began a forensic search. What they found was subtle but unmistakable. Reinforced interior walls, soundproofing, disguised as insulation. Locks placed higher than necessary, out of a child's reach, and beneath a layer of new flooring, faint scratches that matched the pattern found in the Hinsdale building. When they showed Lily photographs from the property, she didn't react at first. Then she reached out and touched the image gently, almost reverently. "This was one of the quiet places," she said. The revelation that Lily had been moved between locations added another layer of horror. It meant planning, transport, risk. It meant the man who held her had felt confident enough to move her through the world without being seen. Investigators asked how often she had been moved. Whenever he felt forgotten, she said. The timeline suggested a man who periodically reinvented himself, shedding identities, adopting new ones, always staying just ahead of scrutiny. Someone who understood systems well enough to exploit their blind spots. Someone ordinary enough to blend in completely. The public reaction was swift and volatile. Media coverage shifted from curiosity to outrage. Hinsdale was no longer a tragic backdrop. It was being scrutinized as a potential accomplice, a community whose collective inaction had allowed something monstrous to persist. Lily became the center of this storm without ever seeking it. She refused interviews. She declined public appearances. When asked why she wouldn't speak directly to the public, she gave a simple answer. "He liked attention," she said. "I won't give it to him." Her parents struggled with the realization that the daughter they had lost had returned as someone fundamentally altered. They mourned not just the years stolen from her, but the parts of her that might never come back. Conversations were careful, restrained. Affection was negotiated rather than assumed. One evening, as winter approached and the town prepared for the first snowfall since Lily's return, she asked to visit her childhood home. The request unsettled everyone, but it was granted. The house was empty now, sold and resold over the years. Its rooms repainted, remodeled, sanitized of memory. Lily walked through it slowly, touching walls, counting steps, standing in doorways longer than necessary. "This is where it stopped," she said quietly, standing near the front door. "This is where I learned how fast things can change." Her parents watched from a distance, unsure whether to approach. Lily turned to them, her expression softer than it had been in weeks. "You didn't fail," she said. "You just didn't know how quiet he could be." That's tell. That night, Lily slept for nearly 10 hours straight, the longest uninterrupted rest she had had since her return. When she woke, she asked for paper and began writing for the first time. The pages were not a story. They were lists, dates without explanation, locations identified only by sensations, smells, temperatures, sounds, a map no one else could read yet. When investigators reviewed the pages, they realized something chilling. Lily was not remembering randomly. She was reconstructing, and she wasn't doing it for closure. She was doing it because she believed there were things the man had hidden that even death had not erased. He planned for people to forget, she said. But he underestimated how much I remembered. As winter settled over Hinsdale, the town waited again. Not for answers this time, but for revelations. Because Lily Harper had not come back empty-handed. She had come back carrying a record. And once that record was fully revealed, Hinsdale would never be able to claim ignorance again. As the pages Lily had written were transcribed and analyzed, investigators began to understand that what she carried in her memory was not simply trauma, but structure. The lists were not random impressions. They formed sequences, times of day aligned with sounds, locations aligned with temperature shifts, smells aligned with materials. When layered together, they revealed a pattern of movement and control that extended far beyond a single room or a single town. Lily watched the professionals work without impatience. She had learned long ago that waiting was a form of power. When asked whether she wanted to know what they were finding, she shook her head. "I already know," she said. "You're just catching up." The man who had kept her had not been careless. He had not relied on brute force or chaos. He had relied on predictability, on the assumption that people saw only what they expected to see. He had chosen places that looked ordinary, that smelled like dust and paint and old wood. Places where sound blended into the background noise of daily life. Places where a child's presence could be explained away by imagination or denial. As winter deepened, the investigation quietly expanded into other towns. Old missing person reports were reopened, cases long closed due to lack of evidence. The similarities were subtle, but undeniable. Children who vanished briefly and were found confused but unharmed. Children whose stories were dismissed because they sounded rehearsed or strange. Children who grew up with an unexplainable fear of enclosed spaces, of silence, of being watched. Not all of them had survived. Lily was told only what she needed to know. Still, she sensed the shift. She could feel the weight in the room change when investigators entered. She recognized the look on their faces, the one that meant the truth was no longer containable. "They're listening now," she said one evening. "That's dangerous." When asked who she meant, she didn't clarify. She didn't need to. The town of Hinsdale reacted predictably to the widening scope of the case. Fear turned inward. People began locking doors earlier. Children were walked to bus stops instead of going alone. Community meetings were held, filled with reassurances that came too late to be comforting. The same voices that once insisted nothing like that could happen here now demanded explanations, accountability, someone to blame. Lily did not attend those meetings. She spent her time reconstructing routes in her mind, overlaying past and present. She corrected investigators when they assumed distances incorrectly. She reminded them that perception changed when movement was controlled. "It's closer than you think," she told them. "Everything feels closer when you're not allowed to leave. And aspect of having, that's no. And aspect of having, and aspect of having, and aspect of having, and aspect of having, and aspect of having." One night, Lily asked to speak to a detective alone. When the room cleared, she placed her hands flat on the table and leaned forward. "He didn't die the way you think," she said. The detective felt a chill move through him. He planned his ending, Lily continued. He always did. He talked about it, about choosing when to stop being visible. She explained that the man believed disappearance was a form of control equal to captivity. To vanish completely, leaving behind questions instead of answers, was, to him, the ultimate act of authorship. He did not fear death, he feared irrelevance. That belief reframed the search for his remains. If he had planned his disappearance, then finding a body might never have been the goal. Instead, he would have left fragments, enough to suggest an ending without confirming it. Investigators began re-examining supposed deaths connected to similar profiles. Men who had died alone, whose deaths were ruled natural or accidental, whose lives had been sparse enough to avoid scrutiny. Each case was reopened with new eyes. Meanwhile, Lily began to change. The vigilance that had defined her early return softened into something else. Not relaxation, but intention. She asked for access to records. She requested to review photographs. She began pointing out inconsistencies before anyone else noticed them. "You're still looking for him as a person," she said. He thought of himself as a process. That word, process, unsettled the room. It suggested continuity, beyond a single identity. It suggested repetition, refinement, evolution. Lily explained that he believed what he was doing could be taught, replicated, improved upon. That frightened investigators more than the idea of a lone offender ever could. As spring approached, a breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. A former building inspector, now retired, contacted authorities after recognizing structural similarities between several properties under investigation. He admitted he had once approved renovations that made little sense to him at the time. Interior modifications that reduced space efficiency. Reinforcements placed where they weren't needed. "I thought they were eccentric," he said. "I didn't think they were hiding something." The properties formed a loose network, spread across towns, none remarkable on their own. Together, they told a story of patience and planning, spanning decades. When Lily was shown the network map, she studied it silently. "He got sloppy near the end," she said. "He was rushing." That observation proved critical. The last properties in the sequence showed signs of haste. Materials mismatched, soundproofing incomplete, locks improvised. It suggested a man losing control, either physically or psychologically, or both. Investigators focused their attention on the final location Lily had identified as significant. It was not a hidden room or a basement. It was a public adjacent space, something people passed daily without question. A place that relied entirely on collective blindness. When they arrived, they found what Lily had expected them to find: evidence of surveillance, notes written in shorthand, schedules, and a final message, incomplete but unmistakable in tone. It was not a confession, it was a justification. The message spoke of preservation, of legacy, of the importance of being witnessed even in absence. It framed the children not as victims, but as participants in a larger experiment about memory and forgetting. When Lily read the transcription, she did not react. "He always wanted someone to finish it," she said. "That was his mistake." She explained that the man believed control could be transferred, that the system could outlive him. He underestimated the impact of returning a witness to the world. Lily's survival was not an accident. It was a miscalculation. By letting her go, he had introduced an uncontrollable variable into his carefully managed design. He had believed that years of conditioning would ensure her silence. He had believed invisibility would persist. He was wrong. As indictments began to form and cases reopened across state lines, Hinsdale's name became synonymous not just with tragedy, but with reckoning. The town was forced to confront the cost of its own comfort, the ways it had chosen not to see. Lily was offered anonymity, relocation, a chance to disappear in the way her captor once had. She refused. "I won't vanish," she said. "That's how he wins." Instead, she chose a quieter form of presence. She worked with investigators, not as a symbol, but as a source. She refused interviews. She avoided spectacle. She focused on precision. Months passed, Arrests were made. Truths surfaced. Not everything was resolved. Some questions remained unanswered. Some names unrecovered. The damage could not be undone. One evening, long after the cameras had left and the town had begun to settle into a new, uneasy normal, Lily stood alone near the river where people once searched for her. The water moved steadily, indifferent to memory. She understood now what he had never fully grasped. Control depended on silence, and silence, once broken, could never be restored. Lily did not look back at Hinsdale as she walked away. She didn't need to. The town would carry her story forward, whether it wanted to or not, because forgetting was no longer an option. And the girl who disappeared at 7 had returned not to be rescued, but to make sure that no one like her would ever be hidden so easily again. The legal proceedings unfolded slowly, as they always did, weighed down by procedure and restraint, but the psychological consequences moved faster than any courtroom timeline. Hinsdale did not return to normal. It redefined what normal meant. People learned to live with the knowledge that evil did not always announce itself, that it could coexist with routine, with politeness, with years of shared history. Lily remained nearby, though not visible in the ways people expected. She declined public recognition, declined to be framed as a survivor in the traditional sense. She did not speak about healing. She spoke about clarity. She met with investigators in small rooms, away from windows, where sound did not echo. She corrected assumptions. She rejected emotional language when it distorted facts. He depended on interpretation, she said once. Facts were what frightened him. As more connections were uncovered, a disturbing picture emerged. The man Lily described had not acted entirely alone, not in the way people imagined. There were no accomplices in the conventional sense, no co-conspirators exchanging plans. Instead, there were enablers, passive and indirect, systems that failed quietly. People who followed protocol instead of instinct. Moments when something felt wrong but not wrong enough to interrupt a day. Lily had learned to exploit that same weakness to survive. She explained how he taught her to observe reactions, to predict behavior, how he insisted she understand the rhythms of normal life, because that was where she would eventually disappear again if she wasn't careful. He spoke often about the fragility of attention, about how easily people surrendered focus when comfort was threatened. He said people don't ignore what they see, Lily recalled. They ignore what they don't want to name. That understanding became the core of the ongoing investigation. It was not enough to identify one offender. Authorities began examining how easily similar patterns could exist undetected elsewhere. Training materials were rewritten. Oversight procedures were questioned. Lily's input reshaped policies she would never publicly be credited for. At night, however, the past returned in less structured ways. Lily dreamed of repetition, of footsteps that never arrived, and doors that never opened. She woke with her heart racing, not because she feared being taken again, but because she feared becoming invisible once more. Presence had become something she guarded fiercely, even when she chose solitude. Her parents watched her from a careful distance, learning how to love someone who had learned to live without being loved, in the ordinary sense. They adjusted to her silences. They accepted that affection came in brief, deliberate gestures rather than spontaneous emotion. One evening, her father asked her if she hated the man who had taken her. Lily considered the question longer than he expected. Hate would mean he still gets something from me, she said. He doesn't. That answer marked a turning point. Lily was no longer reacting to the past. She was positioning herself beyond it. The final report concluded that the man most likely ended his life shortly after releasing Lily, but the conclusion felt incomplete even to those who wrote it. There were gaps, timelines that aligned too neatly, evidence that suggested preparation beyond a single ending. Lily read the report carefully and returned it without comment. He always planned redundancies, she said later. One ending was never enough. That statement lingered, uncomfortably, unresolved. Years passed. The intensity of the case faded from public memory, replaced by newer headlines, newer tragedies. Hinsdale remained a reference point, a case study, a warning. For those who lived there, It became a shared fault line, something that divided their sense of before and after. Lily did not leave a trail people could follow. She moved quietly, deliberately, maintaining contact only where necessary. She worked in fields adjacent to investigation and prevention, never as a public figure, always as a consultant whose name did not appear on documents. Sometimes, late at night, she revisited the lists she had written when she first returned. She noticed things she had missed before, small inconsistencies, sensory details that didn't align with known locations. It troubled her, not because it suggested danger, but because it suggested incompleteness. One detail refused to settle: a sound, a rhythmic noise she remembered hearing near the end, something she had dismissed as machinery or distance. When she finally identified it years later, the realization was immediate and cold. It wasn't a machine. It was a signal. Lily traced the sound backward through her memory, aligning it with dates, locations, and transitions. It pointed not to a place of confinement, but to a place of observation, somewhere elevated, somewhere public enough to be ignored. She did not contact authorities immediately. She waited. She verified. She ensured that what she remembered was not interpretation, but fact. When she finally reached out, the tone of the response told her everything she needed to know. The possibility had never been considered. The oversight was not malicious. It was human. The location she identified had been present the entire time, functioning as intended, trusted implicitly. A place designed to watch, not to be watched. The search that followed was quiet, controlled, deliberately understated. No press, no announcements. The goal was not exposure. It was confirmation. What they found did not rewrite the original case. It expanded it. Records indicated prolonged access, routine use, opportunities no one had questioned, because questioning them would have implied vulnerability in something foundational. The implications were deeply uncomfortable. Lily was asked if she wanted to be involved further. She declined. "This is where it stops being my story," she said. "Now it's yours." The findings were never fully released to the public. They were folded into policy changes, budget adjustments, quiet resignations. The absence of spectacle frustrated some. Lily understood why it had to be that way. Not every truth protected people equally. Years later, long after her name stopped appearing in documents altogether, Lily stood once more at the edge of a town that no longer recognized her. She blended easily now. She knew how. She always had. The difference was choice. She could disappear if she wanted to. She chose not to, because being seen, even imperfectly, was the one thing that ensured the process would never repeat itself exactly the same way again. And somewhere, buried beneath layers of routine and denial, the systems that once allowed a child to vanish carried a permanent flaw. They had been forced to remember, and memory, once altered, never returns to its original shape. Time did what it always did. It smoothed edges without erasing them. The story of Hinsdale settled into the public consciousness as something finished, categorized, archived. For most people, it became a reference point rather than a living wound, a case studied, a cautionary example, something that had happened, past tense, safely contained. For Lily, time behaved differently. She understood now that memory did not fade evenly. It thinned in some places and thickened in others, condensing around details that had once seemed insignificant. She noticed how certain sounds still sharpened her focus instantly, how particular architectural choices drew her attention no matter where she was. She had learned not to fight these instincts. They were not symptoms. They were tools. She lived simply, deliberately, no excess, no habits that could calcify into predictability. She chose environments where observation was mutual, where no one was truly anonymous, and where routines shifted just enough to prevent complacency. She had learned what stagnation invited. Occasionally, fragments of the case resurfaced through professional channels. A report citing Hinsdale, a procedural change referencing an unnamed consultant, a training module quietly revised. Lily read these without emotion. Impact did not require acknowledgement. What unsettled her were the letters. They arrived irregularly, always forwarded, never directly addressed. Some were apologies written years too late. Others were confessions framed as explanations. A few were defensive, insisting that no one could have known, that responsibility was diffuse, unavoidable. Lily did not respond to any of them. Reading was enough. One letter stood apart. It was brief, no return address, no apology. It contained a single observation written in careful handwriting. You were not the only variable. Lily read the sentence once, then again, then folded the paper neatly and placed it with the others. She did not panic. Panic belonged to uncertainty. This was something else. She reviewed her early lists, the ones she had assumed were complete. She noticed patterns she had previously dismissed as noise, repetitions that did not align with a single individual's habits, minor variations that suggested adaptation rather than routine. The man had spoken of process. She had believed he meant himself. She considered the alternative. If what he had built was not a singular system but a framework, then it did not require replication to persist. It required permission. Not active permission, but the quieter kind. The kind granted through convenience, through assumption, through trust, extended without verification. Lily began paying attention in a different way. She attended conferences she did not need to attend. She listened to conversations that were not meant to include her. She noted how often certainty was expressed without evidence, how frequently authority replaced scrutiny. The language was familiar, comfort dressed up as confidence. She did not intervene immediately. She waited, watching for confirmation rather than coincidence. It came gradually. A case in another state bore surface similarities, but diverged in critical ways. The recovery timeline was wrong. The environment too controlled. The child's language echoed patterns Lily recognized instantly, not in content, but in structure. The pauses, the substitutions, the absence of spontaneous detail. Conditioning left fingerprints. Lily reached out quietly, not to the media, not to oversight boards, to a single investigator known for distrusting clean narratives. She shared observations without conclusions, data without accusation. The response was cautious but attentive. An internal review followed. Then, another. The findings were inconclusive in the way that signaled resistance rather than resolution. Lily understood. Systems protected themselves reflexively. She did not push. Instead, she waited for the system to fail on its own. It did. A procedural shortcut exposed a discrepancy that could not be ignored. Documentation did not match practice. Oversight logs conflicted with access records. Nothing dramatic. Nothing immediately criminal. Just enough misalignment to force deeper inquiry. That inquiry uncovered something deeply ordinary. Not a mastermind. Not a network. A culture of unchecked assumption. A belief that long-standing structures did not require reevaluation because acknowledging vulnerability would undermine confidence. The same logic that had once allowed a child to remain unseen. Lily was asked, again, if she wished to be involved publicly. She declined. Visibility was not leverage. Understanding was. She continued advising from the periphery, shaping questions rather than answers. She insisted on ambiguity where certainty had been premature. She encouraged slowness where conclusions felt satisfying too quickly. Progress was incremental, frustrating, necessary. Years passed this way, measured not by milestones, but by absences. Fewer unexplained gaps, fewer dismissed anomalies, fewer children whose stories were quietly categorized as confusion. Lily never framed this as victory. Victory implied an ending. She knew better. One evening, walking through a city she had chosen precisely because it did not resemble Hinsdale, Lily noticed a familiar sensation. Not fear, recognition. A subtle tightening of attention. A space designed to direct movement subtly, rather than restrict it outright. Benign in appearance. Efficient. Unquestioned. She paused. She observed. She noted the exits, the sightlines, the assumptions embedded in the layout. She compared them to memory, not searching for a match, but for intention. The sensation passed, not because the place was safe, but because it was unfinished. Lily continued on. She understood now that what she guarded against was not a person or even a method. It was a pattern of thinking. The belief that harm required visibility, that control required force, that danger announced itself. It did not. Danger preferred comfort, and comfort, once earned, was rarely challenged. Lily carried this understanding without dramatizing it. She did not warn indiscriminately. She did not see threats everywhere. She simply refused to surrender curiosity. Years later, long after her name faded completely from any formal record, a new generation of investigators trained under guidelines they did not know she had influenced. They questioned assumptions more readily. They documented silence as carefully as action. They treated absence as data. The process had changed. Not enough to guarantee safety. Enough to reduce blindness. Lily knew that was the most anyone could reasonably achieve. One morning, she received a final forwarded message. No threat. No mystery. A simple acknowledgement from someone who had never known her name, but had benefited from her insistence on asking the wrong questions at the right time. She deleted it without ceremony. Closure was not something she pursued. Presence was. And somewhere, in places that relied too heavily on being trusted without being examined, that presence lingered as an inconvenience, a resistance, a reminder that disappearance was never as complete as those who relied on it believed. The girl who vanished at 7 had not returned to restore balance or resolve a narrative. She had returned to disrupt a habit. And habits, once disrupted often enough, lost their power to hide what they depended on most: silence. Silence did not end when people believed the case was over. It changed shape. It became institutional, procedural, disguised as resolution. Lily understood this better than anyone because she had lived inside silence long enough to recognize when it was being repackaged as safety. She no longer tracked time by years. She tracked it by shifts, subtle changes in language, small edits in official phrasing, words removed rather than added, the absence of certain questions from reports that once would have included them. These omissions were not accidental. They were fatigue. They were relief, masquerading as progress. Lily had learned that the most dangerous moment was not when attention arrived, but when it left. She kept no permanent residence. Not out of fear, but out of discipline. Permanence invited routine, and routine invited assumption. She stayed long enough to understand a place, then moved on before familiarity dulled her perception. She never disappeared completely. She left traces where they mattered. Occasionally, she encountered resistance, professionals who resented being questioned, systems that mistook longevity for legitimacy. Lily did not confront them directly. Confrontation solidified positions. Instead, she asked questions that had no immediate answers and waited for discomfort to do the work. The pattern she had disrupted began to resist, not violently, not overtly. It resisted through denial, through minimization, through the quiet reassertion of old norms. Lily recognized this phase immediately. It was the same phase she had lived through as a child, when compliance was expected to return once novelty faded. It never did. A case surfaced quietly in a region that had revised its oversight protocols only partially. The changes looked good on paper. In practice, they relied too heavily on trust. Lily noticed the gap before anyone else did. The details were familiar, not identical. Refined. She did not intervene personally this time. She sent a single message to someone trained under the new guidelines. A question, nothing more. The response was delayed, then defensive, then cautious, then curious. The investigation that followed did not uncover a hidden room or a singular perpetrator. It uncovered something more difficult to address, a distributed failure, a chain of reasonable decisions that collectively produced unreasonable outcomes. The child involved was recovered early. That mattered. Lily read the report carefully. noting where intervention had occurred sooner than it would have years earlier. The system had not become perfect. It had become interruptible. That was enough. She allowed herself a moment of stillness after that. Not satisfaction, recognition, the kind that did not require witnesses. But disruption carried consequences. People began to notice a recurring absence where certainty used to be. Decisions took longer. Assumptions were challenged. Confidence softened into caution. Some resented this shift. They framed it as inefficiency, as overcorrection. Lily recognized the language. It was the same language used to justify looking away. She withdrew further after that, not out of defeat, but strategy. Overexposure dulled impact. She trusted the process she had helped, fracture to continue fracturing itself. Years later, she returned briefly to Hinsdale. Not publicly, not ceremonially. She walked through it as a stranger, unnoticed, exactly as she once had been when invisibility was imposed rather than chosen. The town looked smaller, less threatening, more honest in its ordinariness. The river moved the same way it always had. She stood there only a moment, long enough to acknowledge that the place no longer held her. It never truly had. It had only failed to see her. As she left, she felt no pull to look back. Somewhere else, another system was being trusted too easily. Another assumption was hardening into routine. Another silence was forming its edges. Lily would notice. She always did. Not because she was watching everything, but because she never stopped asking the one question that made systems uncomfortable. What happens if this fails quietly? That question followed her. Not like a burden, but like a compass. And as long as it existed, disappearance would never be as simple as it once had been. The question followed her longer than she expected, not because it demanded an answer, but because it revealed how often it had never been asked before. What happens if this fails quietly was not a challenge to authority, not an accusation. It was an interruption, and interruptions were dangerous to systems built on momentum. Lily learned to recognize the moment when a system decided it was finished learning. It was subtle. Meetings became shorter, reports became cleaner, language became confident again. Uncertainty was framed as an obstacle rather than a signal. That was when she paid the closest attention. She was careful not to become predictable herself. Predictability had been the man's greatest strength, not because he was repetitive, but because he understood how repetition numbed perception. Lily refused that numbness. She rotated roles. She shifted environments. She allowed gaps in her own visibility so no one assumed continuity. She did not see herself as a guardian. Guardians believed in thresholds that could be defended. Lily believed only in pressure points. Small, precise places where attention could be applied just long enough to change direction. In one city, it was a transportation hub redesigned for efficiency. Flow optimized. Bottlenecks eliminated. Oversight automated. Lily walked through it once and felt the same tightening she had felt years earlier, not because something was wrong, but because nothing questioned itself anymore. Everything worked too smoothly. She noted it. She said nothing. Months later, an unrelated audit exposed a vulnerability that had been invisible precisely because it had never caused a problem before. The fix was minor. The implication was not. Lily read the follow-up memo and moved on. She did not collect these moments as proof of purpose. Purpose implied permanence. She had learned what permanence invited. Sometimes, late at night, she allowed herself to remember the girl she had been before disappearance. Rewrote her internal map. Not with nostalgia, with curiosity. She wondered who that girl would have become if time had unfolded normally. The thought no longer hurt. It felt abstract, like imagining a city she had never visited. That girl had believed safety was something given. Lily knew better now. Safety was something renegotiated constantly, and the negotiation never ended. The world continued, as it always did, to oscillate between vigilance and forgetfulness. Crises sharpened attention. Stability dulled it. Lily did not fight that cycle. She worked within it, nudging when the arc leaned too far toward comfort. Occasionally, she encountered people who reminded her of herself in unexpected ways. Analysts who hesitated before accepting clean explanations. Inspectors who lingered when everyone else was ready to sign off. Investigators who documented what they could not prove yet. Lily recognized them immediately. She never told them why their instincts mattered. She didn't need to. They already felt it. Years passed without incident, dramatic enough to be remembered publicly. That was not an absence of danger. It was an absence of permission. The difference mattered. Lily aged quietly. Lines appeared around her eyes, earned not from fear, but from sustained attention. She accepted them without resistance. Her body no longer felt like an environment she had to defend constantly. It felt like a place she occupied by choice. Then came the moment she had always known would arrive. Not a case, not a signal, a realization. She was no longer the sharpest interruption in the room. Others had begun asking the question before she did. Not everywhere, not always, but often enough. She noticed it in the phrasing of reports, in the pauses before conclusions, in the willingness to leave sections open rather than forcing closure. The systems had not transformed completely. They had developed hesitation, and hesitation, she knew, was the beginning of accountability. Lily stepped back further after that, not abruptly, gradually. She declined invitations. She let messages go unanswered longer. She trusted the fractures she had helped create to propagate without her presence. One final time, she reviewed the earliest lists she had written, the ones born of captivity and necessity. They no longer felt unfinished. They felt historical. Records of a time when silence had been absolute. She destroyed them carefully, not to erase the past, but to ensure it did not become a relic, fetishized instead of understood. The past did not need artifacts. It needed consequences. Lily lived the rest of her life without spectacle. No interviews, no memoirs, no symbolic returns. When she died, years later, it was quietly, without announcement. There were no headlines, no retrospectives. That, too, was intentional. What remained was not a story people could consume, but a shift they continued to live inside without naming it. Procedures that asked one more question than before. Training that lingered on absence instead of dismissing it. Professionals who felt unease sooner and trusted it longer. Somewhere, occasionally, a child was noticed earlier than they would have been years ago. A report was reopened instead of archived. A space was examined twice instead of once. No one traced those moments back to Lily Harper. She would have rejected the idea anyway. The girl who disappeared at 7 did not return to become a symbol. She returned to make disappearance harder. And long after her name faded completely, long after Hinsdale became just another town on a map, the quiet question she carried continued to move through systems that preferred certainty, bending them just enough to keep silence from ever settling comfortably again. What people never understood was that silence did not end with Lily's death any more than it had ended with her return. Silence did not belong to her. It belonged to systems, to habits, to the spaces between responsibility and action. Removing one person never removed the conditions that made disappearance possible. It only tested whether those conditions had learned anything. For a while after she was gone, the hesitation she had helped introduce held. Reports remained open longer. Reviews included margins filled with questions rather than conclusions. Uncertainty was tolerated, even respected. It felt, to some, like progress. Then, familiarity began its slow work. New professionals entered systems without knowing why certain rules existed. Protocols were followed without understanding the cost that had created them. Caution, once intentional, became routine, and routine, inevitably, began to dull again. The cycle did not repeat exactly. It never did. That was the illusion people relied on, the belief that difference meant immunity. The pattern shifted, adapted, wore a different face. It always did. In one region, years after Lily was gone, a case stalled for reasons no one could fully articulate. Nothing was overtly wrong. The paperwork was complete. The interviews were conducted. The timelines aligned well enough to satisfy review, and yet something lingered, a subtle discomfort that refused to resolve. A junior analyst noticed it first. She had no reference to Hinsdale, no knowledge of Lily. She had simply been trained in a system shaped by absence rather than certainty. She noticed that one assumption had gone unchallenged, not because it was strong, but because it was convenient. She hesitated. That hesitation delayed closure by 3 days. In those 3 days, a detail surfaced that had been present all along, but ignored because it did not fit cleanly. It led to a different line of inquiry. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just enough. Enough to find a child sooner than they otherwise would have. Enough to interrupt. No one celebrated the delay. It was recorded as procedural friction, inefficiency, a minor complication. The analyst absorbed the quiet frustration, directed her way, and moved on. She never knew that her hesitation had lineage. That it traced back to a girl who learned, very young, that the absence of noise was not the absence of harm. This was how Lily's influence persisted, not as a story told, but as a reflex inherited, not as memory, but as behavior. Over time, the world adjusted around these small resistances, not completely, never completely, but enough to make disappearance more labor-intensive, more fragile, less assured. The people who relied on invisibility felt it first. They always did. Control depended on predictability, and predictability had begun to fracture. The fractures were small, but they multiplied. A door questioned twice instead of once. A timeline left open instead of sealed. A silence treated as information rather than absence. These were not victories. They were costs. Costs that accumulated quietly. Somewhere, someone attempting to rely on the old assumptions encountered resistance they could not name. A delay, an inquiry, an interruption. They adjusted, but the adjustment introduced risk. Risk invited exposure. Exposure invited scrutiny. The chain did not always complete, but sometimes it did, and sometimes was enough. If Lily could have observed this from a distance, she would not have been surprised. She never believed in endings. She believed in pressure, applied consistently enough to alter shape. Her life had not been a warning. Warnings were easy to ignore. It had been a distortion. She had bent the surface just enough that reflection no longer looked natural. That normal no longer felt effortless. That silence required maintenance. And maintenance, over time, exhausted even the most patient systems. Long after anyone remembered why certain questions existed, they continued to be asked, not because of fear, not because of trauma, but because it felt wrong not to ask them. That feeling was Lily's true legacy, not her survival, not her testimony, not the places she had been hidden, but the discomfort that lingered after certainty, the pause that interrupted conclusion, the instinct to look again when everyone else was ready to move on. The girl who disappeared at 7 had not come back to be found. She had come back to change how finding worked. And as long as hesitation existed where silence once settled easily, disappearance would never regain the effortless certainty it had relied on before. Not completely, not quietly, not ever again in the same way.